you doing, everybody? My name is Dean Olson. I am a songwriter, radio host, and producer from Orange County, California, and I'm really just an average guy who loves to make music. But when I get behind a microphone, I become the StrongWriter on the radio, helping songwriters and artists keep musically fit. And the way I like to be doing that is through faith and hope and encouragement, by taking in the stories and experiences told to me by my wonderful guests, and by learning from the best in the business and passing it along to you. And now I want to welcome you guys to a very beautiful day for a fantastic show. And today I'm going to travel via Zoom again to Seattle, Washington, or parts thereof. I'll find out exactly where we are, but I want to introduce you and myself to the man you're going to see here on the screen. His name is Ian Jones. He is a singer, songwriter, performing artist who has a very special EP out called Evergreens, set for release in October. And it's my pleasure to get rid of this piece of paper and actually talk off the cuff with this guy, just to welcome him to the show. Hey, let's welcome him very warmly to my humble little program, Ian Jones. How's that?
Hey, how you doing?
Okay.
How are you?
I almost crashed and burned on that thing. I couldn't read my own. I can't read my own writing sometimes here. So let me get rid of this. Now we get to just sit here and talk. Hey, I haven't had an Ian on the show before. That's a very cool name for a musician. I had to think about it for a second. There's lots of cool Ians in music. You know, I didn't have to look them up on the internet. There are a few off the top of my head, but some pretty famous. Yeah.
Anderson?
Yeah, Ian and Anderson and Ian Hunter, Mott the Hoople. There's if you're younger, you probably, there's the guy from Joy Division, the guy from The Cult. Yeah. There's lots of Ians who were like frontmen. And anyway, good to, that's a cool name if it's a given one. So that's pretty cool.
Yep, Ian Langland Jones, named after, I'm not sure where the Ian came from. Langland came after a poet named Joe Langland that was friends with my dad. And of course, Jones being the last name. So
off the air here, you were saying that you had quote hippie unquote parents. So how was that? Were you in Seattle growing up with them?
So I grew up. My dad was professor of English at a small private university in just south of Seattle in a town called Tacoma or Parkland, and we lived in the South End, kind of out in the woods, and my dad was an English teacher and my mom was a teacher. And, we grew up, my mom was more of she was a painter and did a lot of soft sculpture and was into, the Beatles and Joni Mitchell and James Taylor, Bob Dylan, that sort of stuff. And then my dad was the country guy and classical. So I had a really well-rounded musical upbringing.
That's always good.
Along with lots of parties.
Really?
Where there was
thrown by your parents, those kind of parties, or your parties?
Oh no, my parents' parties. It's great because, and my mom now, my dad's gone, but my mom's here up in Seattle, and we still get together and we watch slides of the old, the old slide projector of the parties when I was running around with no clothes on, maybe 2-3 years old. Uh-huh. And all the long-haired guys, everyone's sitting around drinking wine and, smoking joints and being hippies back in the 70s. So good memories. Good memories,
yeah. At least for them, I'm sure they all remember it. I hope. Yeah, back then.
Questionable.
Yeah, running around naked. That sounds like a hippie. Hippie kids running around doing whatever. And good memories growing up as a kid. I'm sure.
Yeah,
right.
Great music. There was always music.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes joke that my babysitter was a turntable.
You like that, huh?
Because I learned very early how to use the turntable, and we had tons of records, which I still own today. I made sure I got those, and we had a piano.
Uh-huh.
And, so I taught myself to play piano at an early age, and just listen to music all the time.
Oh, good. So where did it go from there? Did you music stayed with you all the way through, your childhood, teenage years, right into adulthood, things like that?
I was where there was kids at school that played and everyone knew about it. I was like the closet musician. And even to this day, like if there's a party and there's a piano or a guitar, there's always that one guy or girl that'll go over and grab it or sit down and just start playing, right?
I remember those. Yep.
And I was like, even if someone knew, they'd be, hey, you should go play a song. I'd be like, yeah, no, let them do that. I was, I guess, shy or trepidatious, whatever you want to say. I just wasn't sure that was really my place. But I loved music, and I played, and I taught myself to play piano. And then one of the people that was one of the guitar players that everyone knew, he and his brother, they taught me a couple chords. And then, oh man, this had to have been early 80s. We figured out REM songs when, those first early REM records. And so we would play REM, and then we got into the Smiths, and that, when everyone was starting to get into like the hair metal and stuff like that, we were listening to, Echo and the Bunnymen and the Smiths and REM.
Wow. Nice.
All those more independent music. The Alarm, like you mentioned, the Cult earlier.
Yeah, the Cult. Yeah. But REM, so you're talking about like South Central Rain and those type of songs back then?
Yeah, Fables of the Reconstruction was one of my favorites of all time. So that's, and then, it wasn't till I moved up to Seattle to go to University of Washington, and I proceeded to drop out rather quickly. I got kind of sick, and I'd been playing music, and there was a party at the house I lived in, and I started to, I'd had enough wine, and so someone was passing the guitar around, and I picked it up, and they were like, "Oh, you play?" So I started playing like some old McCartney. And my roommate was a huge Paul and Beatles fan, and I started playing this song. I can't remember what song it was. And he just, as soon as I started playing it, his head snapped around and was like, "What?" So we became close. He was a Berkeley guy. He was a bass player. We just started playing together, and he took me out, and he got me in front of people playing live for the first time. He kind of tricked me, but it doesn't matter, because I went and I played, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool." And then from there, I kind of stalked this guy who was a great guitar player, and ended up joining the band with him. We're still friends to this day. He lives in Austin. His name's Jeff Lorian, and the band back then was called the Orange King, and we played all through the 90s in Seattle. And then that band broke up, and then, like I said, I moved down to California, played, made records down there, toured. And then when it was time to, we got married, my gal and I got married, and we wanted to have kids. And so we decided we'd come back up here and start a family. And so, things, and then, then some life got in the way. I was going to take a couple of years off, have kids, and then jump back into the music industry. But some stuff happened with family, and my 2 or 3 years off turned into like 13 or 14 years off.
Oh yeah. See, that story is tailor-made for the show. I mean, I love to hear that kind of stuff. Now, how much can you tell of that without being too personal about what happened?
Well, we came back up, and the reason we came back up here, because this is where my wife's from the Midwest and I'm from up here, and this is where we met, and this is where my family was. So we came back up, and we had been here a couple years, and my dad's wife got sick. And she got diagnosed with cancer and was gone within a month. Oh,
that's quick.
And we took care of my dad. I took care of my dad. I was there for him, and, just to make sure because he kind of fell off the deep end, understandably. And we had a daughter, and we spent a lot of time with my dad. And it got to the point where I was like, hey, we need to get you kind of back in shape, we got to get you back in the game. But we, and so he kind of pulled himself together and was like, hey, yeah, let's do this. And right when he was starting to hit his stride, he got diagnosed with lung cancer. And I'll tell you what, I mean, if you're going to get diagnosed with a bad illness, Seattle is not a bad place to be, because the hospitals up here are just top notch. So we worked with Seattle Cancer Care Alliance and Fred Hutch and University of Washington Medical. It's all kind of a team. And the cancer actually didn't kill my dad, but the COPD that came along with years of smoking. And
he had that too.
Complicated. And then to top the story off, he ended up dying the same day, 3 hours before my son was born.
Oh,
so
boy.
So yeah, and then I had to take care of my dad's estate, which was a hot mess. And when we finally came out of that, I was like, all right. And I actually did make a record when my dad was sick. It was my first true solo record as a solo artist. I hired a producer, and it's called Piano Songs Volume 1, and it's basically 20 years worth of piano songs, all recorded and put together. And that project may have saved my life, because without it, I don't know what I would have done.
So it's the old music saved my life story. I like that.
Yeah, well, and it's true.
I mean, it's bittersweet. I mean, it's like that you had to really pay for that with your, with your tears and your all that other stuff that you had to go through with Dad, and that's nasty. I hate that. But then I'm glad it came out in a sweet way. Sorry, I keep talking over you like that.
When I tell the story about my dad dying and my son being born on the same day, everyone says, "Oh man, I bet you've written so much about that." And the truth of the matter is, it was only a couple months ago that I actually wrote something. Carrie Baker from Conqueror, my publicist, he asked me to write something, and I ended up writing an essay. And it's the first thing that I did. And it was about soul crossing, because I'm pretty sure, without sounding cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, that my dad was gone, and I think he knew that he was never going to meet Max, my son. So he checked out. And if you knew the whole story, it would make sense. He woke up that morning perfectly fine. And as soon as he got the call that Max was coming, apparently the hospice nurse said she'd never seen anything like it. He lay back and died.
Wow.
He checked out. My guess is that he met him somewhere in between and said, "Hey, take it easy on these guys. They've gone through hell for a while." And as much as that sounds crazy, I have witnessed things that lead me to believe that absolutely happened.
Pretty cool.
And I wrote about it in an essay called Soul Crossing. And anyway, I'm sure at some point there'll be a whole album or two about that whole part of my life. But it's still, even though it's 11 years later, it's still a little sensitive. So,
well, I'll have to level with you. I didn't come up with that thought that, oh, you must have written songs about that, but it is kind of. Have you ever dealt with issues by writing something, getting it out of your head and or out of your heart and put it on some paper, or like, yeah. 100%. I don't know if that's, I'm not that type of songwriter that can take that. I guess I keep things bottled in too much and then let it out later, but I guess that's what makes some of these great albums of the past, is that these people have the ability to take what's in here and just spill it out. And just be vulnerable,
Look at Fleetwood Mac.
Oh, they put everything on display. There were how many fights was going on? You had to keep a scorecard who was fighting with whom, and right. And the famous Lindsay Stevie Nicks stuff was
and just add some chemicals and poof.
I used to always enjoy telling people, go your own way, just like he wrote. Like, who wrote that about? She wrote that about him, right? It was her writing to him, and then got him to sing really loud and angry in the background. He's you could hear him, just like you could just hear the anger just dripping from his vocally.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, and I joke sometimes also. When I play live, especially when I do solo stuff, I do a lot of storytelling. I lay the songs out.
Awesome. Yeah.
And I joke sometimes that had I not been a songwriter, my therapy bill would probably be massive, because you get to write songs and you get to put things in songs, and you might disguise them a little bit so that it's not blatantly obvious what you're singing about.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky, you can sing something and someone will take that and go and apply it to themselves and say, "Yeah, I totally can relate." And it might be a totally different thing that they're dealing with, but your song can help them relate. And if that works, then as far as I'm concerned, that's what the meaning of success should be. Yeah. If you can help someone, or if you can touch someone with a piece of your art, then you're successful. I mean, you don't have to get paid for it. I mean, sure, money's great, and because we got to eat, but yeah, it's therapeutic and it's cathartic to be able to go out and sing these songs. And had I not done that, then I would probably be paying money to go see a therapist to talk it out so that I could wake up and continue on the next day, you know?
Yeah.
So we're lucky that way.
Is this the kind of, is that the only songwriting you know how to do? Or is it that because you grew up with all this influence, all these, you know, these great albums. Not everything was like that. I don't think the Mama and the Papas had that type of music, you know, like where they were writing about angry pain and things like that. It was all,
I write about
optimistic stuff, and you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
All kinds of stuff. I mean, I make stuff up frequently and it becomes songs. There's stuff that's totally nonsensical. And again, it's one of those things. I was just talking to someone the other day, and you know, you always have the Neil Young references and the Bob Dylan references where, you know, Neil Young said, "Oh, songs are like clouds. You just have to reach up and grab them while they're there." Songwriting's like fishing, but you have to have your pole in the water. And there's all those analogies. And I think ultimately, when I try to sit down and write a song, I'm a miserable failure. What happens is I will just be doing whatever I'm doing, and they'll come into my head. And like one of the songs from the record, it's called Hallelujah.
Yes.
I was cooking dinner Christmas Eve, December 24th, 2018. And again, I tell this story, so I'll tell it here. 2018 was a rough year for me. One of my best friends died of cancer. My daughter had a really good friend whose parents I was good friends with, whose only son, who was a friend of my daughter, was killed in a horrific car accident. And it wasn't like instantly, it drug out over 6 months and then he finally died. So it was just brutal. We lost David Bowie. There was, and I'm a huge David Bowie fan.
You're right. So that hurt you.
2018 was a crappy year. However, and I was thinking about that, and meanwhile I'm cooking, right? So I've got 7 things cooking. I'm in the middle of the kitchen, and this song pops into my head. Literally the entire song, melody, lyrics, everything. And I can't shut anything off. I can't just turn off the food. So I pull out my phone, and I still have the lyrics on my phone. In my notes. I wrote the entire song out. And then at the end of the night, after everyone was done eating, everyone had gone to bed, and I had drank way too much wine, I went out to my studio, which is where I'm at now, and figured it out. And lo and behold, not only did it work, I probably could have used 100% of what I'd written, but I changed 2 words because they were too poignant. And had the right person heard it, it would have hurt. So I changed them. And the new words work great. They work perfect. They're awesome.
Yeah.
So it's not like I changed them and the song got any weaker. And the whole thing was I'm sitting in my kitchen reflecting on how bad a year it was. And at the same time feeling extraordinarily grateful that I was able to be in a kitchen cooking food for my family. That I was fortunate enough to have that opportunity. So that's where the term hallelujah came. It's like, hey, you know what? It's bad and things have been bad, but you know, tomorrow's another day. The sun's going to come up, you know, and just rejoice and be happy about it. And again, I couldn't have written that song had I sat down and tried to write it.
Yeah. So it came to you, and that's nice.
And that's one of the things I love about cell phones is now you actually have the ability to hum something into it or write something down on it. So you don't have to have a tape recorder. You don't have to have your guitar in your hand, or you don't have to be sitting at a piano. You know, you just got to take the 2 minutes to stop everything you're doing, focus, get it down, and then hopefully you can come back to it and be in the same mindset. It doesn't always work, but in that case, it worked out. So
I appreciate how you told that story, and that you told me how you actually wrote that song. And I don't mean to make this about me, but this is the way I do it too. Songs will come to me. I'll be humming something just as I'm working or doing that part of your brain that turns off when you're showering or you're working on things. And that's when the songs come to me. And like you said, I am also thankful I have something that's really like with me all the time that I can just quickly turn on the recorder and just shout it in there real quick. Even if it's just the melody, I can just go, you know, that kind of thing. Like you did that Hallelujah. You probably had that melody in your head ready to go. and then the words sort of followed, right?
It just all came at once, and I was a little bit overwhelmed, but I got it all down. And then when I wrote it, as I was writing onto my phone, I could just hear the words falling on the cadence of what it needed to be, and I was like, man, this is going to be great. And then when I went out again, it just worked. Now I've done that before as well, where I've hummed something in and I've done something, and then I've gone out. And I don't know if you do this. Do you have something like the 3-day test?
Sort of, yeah. 3-day test after you've written it down, because I have a 3-day test where I do the wrong thing. Actually, I think it up in my head and I'm singing it in my head, and I'm actually formulating the stuff in my head, and I never write it down. And then I'm going like, well, if I can remember it, which is the wrong thing to do, if I can remember it tomorrow in the same fashion, and it still sounds okay in my head, I'll keep on going with it. But I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but the 3-day test is like after you've written it, you go back to it, and it still sounds all right to you.
Yeah, because a lot of the times you'll write something and you'll be like, "This is the best thing ever," and then like 2 days later you'll look at it and go, "What was I thinking? This is garbage," and no one ever hears it. So,
do you ever have anything longer than that?
I did what you did, and I made the mistake once. I was laying in bed. I was super comfortable, and this idea came into my head. And I didn't hum the melody because my wife was sleeping next to me. I didn't want to wake her up. So I wrote down the words, and I thought to myself, oh, I'll remember this tomorrow. And then I went back to sleep, and then I woke up again with it still in my head, and I wrote down some more that came up. This is when you wake up, that's the best, because you know it's good. But once again, I didn't want to get out of bed and come out to the studio to figure it out. And then the next morning, the melody was gone. I had the words, and I'm still trying to find that melody again, because the words I actually had to look it up. I Googled it because I'm like, there has to be a song with this as the title. And there's not. And I'm like, and then I actually told my guitar player, and he goes, that's got to be like an old George Jones song. I'm like, no, dude, I looked it up and it's not.
It's an Ian Jones song.
So I'm going to finish it. I don't want to give any hints out because someone might steal it from me.
That's true. That you do sort of guard your stuff before it's completed, right? You know,
I think the days of copyright infringement and people stealing stuff is over, because everything's got a timestamp on it now, and that'd be a tough one to sell in a court of law if you came in and said, "Yeah, but I've got it from 10 years earlier." You know.
I used to do that poor man's copyright stuff. In fact, I think there's a couple of CDs and cassettes that are in my parents' safe in their house that I did a long time ago. These nobody's going to take these from me. You know, these are my songs, and who knows if they'll hold up. But I just wanted some proof. Back then, I was trying to do it the right way. This is before Napster happened and everything. I didn't want anybody ripping us off. And
now it doesn't matter because there's Spotify, and even if you're getting played, it's kind of like you're getting ripped off.
Yeah, so I've heard. Yeah, that's Spotify is good for a certain purpose, but not for making making bank or anything. It's just not that way.
I had a conversation with a guy yesterday who's another local singer-songwriter from Seattle, and he's got a couple years on me, so he's been doing it since the 80s, and we both agreed that, you know, as much as you can disagree with how it is now with Spotify, with Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff, if you fight it, you're just going to lose, because that's how it is. So just acquiesce, get on board. And as soon as you do, it makes it a lot easier to go on with your life, and you can still play shows, and you can tour if you can tour, and write songs and make records. I mean, anyone who's doing this to get rich is in the wrong line of work.
So everybody tells me that. Everybody. And you have to, and most people do have like a side job and everything. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about that just in a few minutes, because I am interested about what you were doing. You were telling me what you do. But just before we leave that part about the 3-day test and all that stuff, you know Doug Clifford from CCR. He's the drummer, and he was just on my show just recently, and we were having that exact same discussion. He said when you're songwriting, he's a big believer in get that thing out of your head and get it on paper or get it in your phone right away, because you're just going to forget it. or it won't sound exactly like you had it in your head the first time. If you try to go back the next couple of days and recreate it, it's not going to sound like you think it was. So there's tricks to do that. So I think other songwriters can, my songwriting part of the audience is going to love what you're saying about how you create this stuff. And
Paul McCartney said, and there's, because I've had songs. So I don't know if you, on the record, if you listen to it, Liars, Criminals, Beggars, and Thieves.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be the next single.
Okay.
And that song, someone told me once that I shouldn't tell this story, but I'm going to tell it. Because I'm a firm believer in telling the truth and being completely honest. But I started writing that song about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I started, and it's not about Democrats and it's not about Republicans or independents. It's just about politicians. Because they always seem to, and I'm not the first person to say this, they always seem to say one thing and do something else. They campaign on one promise and they end up doing something else. And I think a lot of the times most people don't understand that if you're a politician, when you go into politics, it's not like you can just implement what you want, because you're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of other people that also have to agree or disagree, and you fight it. That's how bills and laws are made. And that's, go to college if you've got to figure that out. But, so that song is not necessarily about a one political party. It's just about politicians in general. But the hook of it never went away. It was always in my head, and I never finished it. And I'm a firm believer that, sit down and write a song, finish it, move on to the next one. But this one was just like a tick. It just burrowed in, it wouldn't go away. And I would be driving and I would get this, something would happen. I'd hear something on the news and I'd be like, God, those SOBs. And then I would liars, criminals, beggars, and thieves. And then I'd come up with another verse and I'd write it down. And I literally had stacks of paper with bits and pieces or full verses and bridges. And then leading up to the last election, it got so utterly ridiculous. You remember, you were there.
Uh-huh.
That I was with Jesse, my producer down in Ojai. And I said, look, man, I got this idea for a song. I've been working on it for 20 years. And I started playing it for him. And he was like, oh, man, we got to finish this. So I laid out everything we had. And we literally had 16 verses and 8 or 9 bridges. And we culled it down to 4 verses and 2 bridges.
Wow.
And
you got Amazing Grace or Star Spangled Banner. You got all these hidden verses that nobody's going to know about.
Yeah, well, then Jesse was joking. He said, you can always pull a Dylan and when you're playing it live, just play one of the hidden verses that no one's heard.
Yeah.
He goes, because they're good. There's some really good verses that didn't make the record.
Yeah.
But the irony of that is that we were working on it. And there's the line that says, when the last fight's done and the new one's begun and you've barely got time to breathe, they'll lift you up, then they'll rip you down unless your roots run deep with your something about your hands behind your back and you're down on your knees.
Yeah.
That was written before George Floyd. The whole thing about not being able to breathe.
Uh-huh.
We were literally mixing it. And when that happened, and he was like, oh my gosh, how weird is that's in the song and that just happened. So I don't know. It's one of those weird things where sometimes songs can come in 10, 15 minutes. Sometimes, God willing, the creek don't rise. It takes 20 years.
Yeah.
So who knows?
Interesting.
I'm not saying all politicians are bad. I'm sure there's some awesome, great politicians.
Yeah. It
just seems to me that they just don't seem to represent it just seems to me that they're elected by the people to represent the people, but they end up not really doing that.
Well, it seems like now in the electronic age, it's accelerated to some degree, and it's not about the people. They're not serving the people anymore. They're serving themselves and serving their own legacy.
Well, like you said earlier, there's a song in there. The times they are a-changing. That's a song. You gotta serve somebody.
Come gather around, all you people, and bear witness with me now. For the promises we've all been made only to be down, dividing all the people. It spreads like a disease. It's all brought on by the liars, criminals, beggars, and thieves. Now some might find it strange that the winds of change blow division through our streets. The rise and fall of those we choose makes our dissidence complete. They draw their lines and they make their demands. Give us information, please. But they're all just a bunch of liars, criminals, beggars, and thieves. And the howling news, in their own view, gives the sense that things are sweet. Some will say it's bad, others that it's good. It just depends on who you meet. I've been up on high and down below and everywhere in between. And it's all controlled by the liars, criminals, beggars, and thieves. Now when the last fight's done and new one's on, you've barely got time to breathe. And they'll build you up and they'll rip you down unless your roots run deep. They take out your legs, arms behind your back, and when you're down on your knees, you know you found the liars, criminals, beggars, and thieves. Now the howling wind, it comes rushing in. It's never been like this, you plead. Now the water that was down at our feet, well, it's well up past our knees. And we shake our heads and we wring our hands, crying, somebody help us, please. They smile and nod like liars, criminals, beggars, and thieves. Down, a new one's begun. They pack all their things and leave. But they leave behind draws us deeper down, and they call it their legacy. Some might get replaced, but it's just a new face in the books of our history. In the end, they're all just liars, criminals, beggars, and thieves. Yeah, in the end, they're all just liars, criminals, beggars, and thieves. Yeah, in the end, they're all just liars, criminals, beggars, and thieves.
I can almost picture that there's a Dylan-esque quality. I don't know if you were channeling that type of cadence, but if you all of a sudden had the inclination to do an impression of Bob Dylan, that would sound totally like something that he was writing, you know?
Well, it's when we did it, we were trying to go for, I mean, yeah, 100%. There's definitely a Dylan influence.
Yeah.
There's also a Tom Petty, which I guess
I agree. That was the next thing I was going to say.
There's also a Birds, a very much. I mean, if we would have thrown a Rickenbacker 12 string on there, I mean, we almost couldn't, because then it would have been like a McGuinn thing. So
yeah, boy, you took it. You said all the names I was going to say, and you were leaving one guy out. Jackson Browne was another guy that I was going to put in there, but everything, the Birds, because I was saying that, you know how the Birds covered a few of the Dylan songs, and plus that My Back Pages. There's a little bit of that. I'm just saying, I walk a fine line when I try to compliment somebody by saying that you sound like somebody else. I don't want to insult you by saying that.
Oh, no, I'll take it all day long.
But, you know, depending on the person that you sound like, if you agree that it's a good person that you're inspired by, I think that's great. But yeah, Birds definitely is what I was picking up on that particular song.
You know, you said one thing that, you know, again, this goes back to me being totally transparent and honest, is that growing up, I didn't have any Jim Messina stuff, right? Well, I also didn't have any Jackson Browne. And I've been told almost more so than any other comparison that I sound a lot like Jackson Browne.
There's parts of it, yes.
So I recently, especially like with my piano album, the piano record, they're like, wow, there's a lot of Jackson Browne there. And I'm like, finally, I was like, okay. So I went and I started digging into Jackson Browne. And man, talk about feeling like I missed the boat. I mean, that guy is amazing. And the stuff he's doing right now is amazing. The stuff he's still putting out, stuff that makes my skin crawl. I mean, so,
in a good way, yeah. The hair stand up.
Yeah, no, he's so brilliant, and his voice is so amazing, and he's just has that touch with everything that he does. And so I'm fortunate that if someone wants to compare me to him, then I'll take that. And I kind of feel bad that I waited so long, because I feel like I might have missed out on maybe some inspiration or something. But I really like one of the things about driving and touring is that especially living in Seattle, is that if you're going to go on tour, you got a lot of driving to do.
Sure.
It's not like the Southeast where you can drive 2 hours and you're in the next market. I mean, there's 7, 8, 10-hour drives from Seattle to get to, Bay Area or wherever.
Oh yeah. Sure.
So I listen to a ton of new music. I love it. I've been learning so much. That's how I was introduced to Jason Isbell. That's how I was introduced to Sturgill Simpson. I got into Charlie Pride. All these great artists that I never knew about. So,
just as a side note, did you agree that you might play a song on your guitar or piano or whatever?
I just happen to have a room full of guitars with me.
That'd be great if you could do your pick, though. I'll tell you what, there are only 6 to choose from on this album, but I liked them all. I can tell you which one I was really enjoying was Born Again Sinner. That was another one that was really a fun one I had. So I couldn't stop going back to that one and playing it again because the
funny thing about that song, and this can be maybe a bit of advice to songwriters, is I've been playing music for over 30 years, and for the longest time I thought I knew what was best for my songs. I wrote them; they're like my kids. I know exactly what's best for them, and you know what? That's not true at all. So if you're a songwriter, what you should really do at least once in your life is find someone who's a producer, and not your buddy who says he's a producer, but vet someone. Find someone who's got credentials, and then take an idea that's a song and just give it to them. Say, here's an acoustic vocal and guitar or whatever version, and give them 100% creative control and see what they do. Because Born Again Sinner was supposed to be like Running Down a Dream, sort of, by Tom Petty. Uh-huh. It was supposed to be this upbeat, in your face, backbeat drum beat. And I went down and I was with Jesse. It was last January before the whole close down of the pandemic. And we were doing some tracking for pre-production, which turned into this record, by the way, because we never actually couldn't go back down. So we salvaged what we had and we turned it into this record. And we had a clicked off, just a scratch acoustic guitar track and vocal track for Born Again Sinner. And when he sent it back to me, and the band had been playing it like that upbeat driving thing.
Sure.
And sitting in the studio, we were having rehearsal, and I said, and I of course had listened to it, and I said, hey, you guys, I want you guys to hear something. And I want your honest opinion. So I put it up on the PA and I played it. Crickets. Silence, dead silence. And finally, 2 of the guys go, sorry, dude, that's so much better than the way we were doing it. And it's completely, 180 doesn't even describe the difference of direction that Jesse took that song. And what did he say? He said, he called it something. He goes, yeah, I kind of went a little Blade Runner with it.
I like that.
He told me that before I heard it, and I was like, Blade Runner, huh? I'm like, okay. And then when I heard it, and my guitar player said, I'm just going to learn that guitar solo because that is the best guitar solo for that song. There's no reason to even try to write another one.
Uh-huh.
And so because of that, we haven't really we haven't really got into that song yet because we just started rehearsing. So we've been rehearsing everything else. So that's the one song that I really don't know that I could play for you right now because I just haven't played it. I haven't gone there in my head yet because I'm going to want to do it like the record. And it's totally different, but I can try to do any of the others.
Guess what? I didn't really expect you to play that one, but you know what? I got an awesome story out of you for that because that's great what you just told me about Jesse and what.
The sun goes down, the stars come up, another night alone. My memory reminds me of a place I used to go. Those days are gone, and tough to see through a rearview mirror haze. But things are looking up now, at least I think they are today. I'm a born-again sinner, I've been waiting in line. I was once a beginner, and then I did my time. I've got some scores to settle before the deal is done. Yeah, I'm a born-again sinner, but not the only one. I dug down deep to make my stand, but it didn't turn out my way. Scratched my head and looking back, wondering what I did wrong that day. The wind blew hard and I blew it off, and I walked out in the streets. Tipped my hat and kicked my heel, never knowing who I might meet. Cause I'm a born-again sinner, and I've been waiting in line. I was once a beginner, but then I did some time. I got some scores to settle before the deal is done. And I'm a born-again sinner, but not the only one. Comes up and the night runs off to rendezvous with the past. I had a hard time and wonder if anything I do is gonna last. The years have gone and everything's changed, but to me I'm still the same. I never realized I'd lose when I jumped into this game. I'm a born-again sinner, and I've been waiting in line. Yeah, I was once a beginner, but then I did my time. I've got some scores to settle with people that I've known. Yeah, I'm a born-again sinner, somebody take me home. Yeah, I'm a born-again sinner, but I've been waiting in line. I was once a beginner, yeah, but then I did my time. I got some scores to settle with people that I know. Yeah, I'm a born-again sinner, somebody take me home. Yeah, I'm a born-again sinner who wants to take me home.
Now, how did he do that? How did he go about trying to reshape that thing? You just gave him, you let him take the thing, and then you just went off and did your own stuff and let him be alone, and he got some his own people together, or did he try to play it himself?
So Jesse is one of those, and it's you know, I don't, if he hears this, I don't want you to, Jesse, don't take this the wrong way, but I describe Jesse as sort of like an alien. There are musicians, there are good musicians, there are great musicians, there are musicians that are freaks, and then there are aliens. Dad was a drummer for Supertramp, and he grew up around music. He's been doing music his whole life. He can play any instrument as good as far as I'm concerned, as good as anyone on the planet. He's that good. He played pedal steel with Lucas Nelson. He fronts Supertramp, so he can play guitar, keyboards. He sings like a bird. If you sat down and talked to him for 2 hours, he wouldn't even mention music. You wouldn't even know he played. He's not that guy. He's the most humble, modest, wonderful person on the planet. And when we did the last record, and I don't know if you've ever had a chance to listen to that, but the Results Not Typical record was done with him. And we did that. We recorded that live in 2 days. We did drums, bass, guitar, piano, and vocals, not to a click. Joey Waronker played drums on it, so why would you need a click track? Everything's live, beginning to we did like 3 takes of each song, picked the best one, and then we overdubbed over that.
Okay.
And when we did that record, I told Jesse, at one point he was like, well, I kind of have this idea for this song. And I told him, I said, hey man, you are the producer. Just so you know, you have 100% control. If you want to totally take the song apart and put it back together totally different, I will do what you want because I trust you. And it was the hardest. I did it with the Piano Songs record, and it was really hard. It was much easier with the Results Not Typical record. And now with what the results we got from that, I mean, I went down to Jesse. I said, okay, dude, acoustic guitar track, vocal track, knock yourself out. So he did the rest of all the instruments. He did drums, bass. We did have Dave Palmer put piano on a song or two. And I think he had Aaron Embry put piano on Evergreens. And then Tom Ball played harmonica on Last Call because Tom's a national treasure down there in Santa Barbara. He's a monster, great multi-musician. But Jesse did everything else. And we have this agreement. We have this arrangement where it's like, look, man, you are my producer. I'm going to try to get you the best possible song ideas, and then you can do whatever you want with them.
Okay.
Because ultimately, it's a snapshot of that song in time. So we put it on the record. We don't have to play it like that.
Right.
I mean, we're gonna.
Of course, you can do it however you want after that, right?
So, and that's as a songwriter. If you're making records, I think that's a really important thing to understand is that you're not married to anything. I mean, try to not put out something that sucks. but it's hey, the more the merrier, really.
No, so this is great. I'm glad that you've sort of filled in my my craving to hear about how a producer takes your stuff and gets it from A to B. But like that particular song, Born Again Sinner, and the other songs on there, did he basically take them and make his own demo, for lack of a better word, so that you knew exactly what his vision of these songs are, and then you take them and approve them?
No, I think with the rest of the songs, at least on this EP, we really were kind of both on the same page. I mean, the songs were pretty finished. Like Evergreens, for example, had been recorded before, just poorly. And he even said, he goes, "Oh, we don't have to change this." We would change the key, maybe like, like Results Not Typical. We were going to call it actually songs in the key of F, because someone told me that like, hey, you need to pick a lane. So I picked a lane, and then I took it just to the bridge. I was like, every song is like a theme and variation on like this same sort of thing. So we would take it from F to F sharp or down to E or something, so that it didn't totally sound like a Rick Astley record. Same song, different words. Yeah. And that's another thing. I poke fun at myself because if you can't do that, you got to have a sense of humor in this whole thing. But no, I think we were on the same page mostly on the rest of them. But even had he changed some of the other ones, I had an idea of where the solo should go in Liars, Criminals, Beggars, and Thieves, and he said, no, I think it should go here. And my response was, you're the producer, man. So it went where he wanted it.
Great.
So,
hey, the bottom line, you guys work well together, and you trust him, and these things came out better than you could have expected.
That is the one thing that's true on both that last record and this one, is it so far exceeded my expectations that I've got nothing but pure joy. Just, I've made records for a long time. And this might be my 13th or 14th record. Of the other ones you won't hear, because I won't let anyone hear them unless you really are nice.
So you got a lot of material in there. Yeah, you're like you have sort of this Prince vault, then I guess, where there's stuff that's never going to hear the light of day.
Well, no, we're talking about going back. The next record's already written. It's already done.
Oh, nice.
And Jesse's actually going to come up here to Seattle, and we're going to use my band. So my band it's my project, but when we have the band, it's Ian Jones and the Living Room All-Stars. So the next record is going to be an Ian Jones and the Living Room All-Stars record.
Cool.
And Jesse's going to produce it up here. We're going to do it at Ken Stringfellow studio from the Posies. He's got a studio up here in Woodinville, Bothell area. And there is, of the 12 songs that are done, or 13, about half of them are brand new. And the other half are older songs that either have never been recorded before or may have been recorded, but definitely need to be re-recorded. So
Results Not Typical, is that the only other one that Jesse worked on with you, or did he do some of the other ones?
Oh, that's the only other one. So those two, and then the first solo record, Piano Songs Volume 1, which is an interesting name because it almost implies there's going to be a Volume 2.
Yeah. I tried that once. We never did do a Volume 2 though.
I better get to writing on the piano if that's going to happen. That was produced by Justin Kronk, who was a Seattle. He's in Bakersfield now, but he's from Bakersfield. He was in a band called Vendetta Red. Again, super, super talented guy. I played him the stuff and he just was like, I already know what's going to go on the record. I already know who's going to play all the parts. He had it done in his head before we even started. So,
wow. Very cool. Just for fun, take me back to those days you were playing in that, what was the band? I'm sorry, in 90s band. What was it called again?
It's called the Orange King.
Orange King, yeah. How'd that form? Did you just, were there buddies of yours, or how'd that come together?
I was trying to be a guitar player, and I was working for this company that what we did is we designed booths for trade shows. And we would do this for this. There was a clothing company, and doing with my construction background, we would design these booths, and then we would take them all apart, put them in these crates. And then in this specific instance, we would go to Vegas twice a year, and then we'd take them out of the crates, put them back together. They would have the show, we'd tear them down, we'd leave. So I was working, and there was this guy who was in a band, and I went to go see him play at this place called Mo up here in Seattle. And now it's called New Mo, but it was back then, and it was called Mo. Really? And the guitar player just blew me away. He was so good. He had like this Keith Richards, Chuck Berry, sort of like bluesy rock, loose, kind of a Jimmy Page sort of style. Technically really good, but very loose with a kind of a swagger. And I thought, the band, I don't really remember much about the band. I just remember him as a guitar player thinking, wow. So I was talking to him, and he needed some work. So I said, come work with me. I was painting houses at the time. So he came and worked with me. And one day I said, hey, would you give guitar lessons? So I met up with him, and I took a guitar lesson from him. And he said, show me what you know. So I showed him. He goes, you don't need lessons. You just need to practice. Because I knew all the chords and stuff. I just, and I'm not a lead player at all. I'm a rhythm player. I write. I try to keep it as simple as possible, and then surround myself with really good players. So he said, you don't need lessons. You just need to practice. So we started just jamming together. Well, one day I showed up, and we were jamming, and they were having band practice. And then he just said, hey, why don't you stay and play with us? So we were playing. And then the next day, one of the guys in the band said, man, I wish we had some more upbeat pop songs. So I went home, and I came back the next practice, and I had like 2.5, 3-minute just pop songs.
Wow.
And I was like, hey, check this out. And I mean, literally 3 chords in the truth, right? And I started playing them, and the guys were like, did you write these? And I'm like, yeah. Well, you said you wanted some pop songs. And they were cheesy, boyfriend, girlfriend, sort of teen Brit pop love stuff. And we were working on the third one, and everyone was getting into it when the singer walked in. And he was like, what's this? And and he stormed out, and that was the end of the band. And so we just started another band, and
dang,
worked out in my favor. And I'm still friends with all the guys, but Jeff and I started the Orange King, and we went through multiple drummers, multiple bass players. But one of the things that was happening in Seattle was there was the grunge thing going on. I mean, that's when Nirvana, Screaming Trees, Mudhoney, Soundgarden,
right. Alice in Chains. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it was all going off in real time. I mean, any night of the week, you could go down and probably catch one of those guys either at a club or in a parking garage or in someone's living room, and which did happen. We were all friends with all the, Jeff was in a band called Coffin Break back in the early 90s. And so it was a really tight-knit, wonderful musical community, a big brotherhood. Everyone supported everyone. But we were doing stuff. I mean, I was playing piano, and we were doing stuff that sounded like it came off of Let It Be in this era. And there was a lot of people that were like, man, your guys' songs are really good, but we got no recognition because we weren't doing what everyone else was doing.
Right. You didn't have that same sound. So it's different.
Told Jeff, I said, I don't want to do what everyone else is doing. I want to do what we want to do. And he was in total agreement. So we just kept doing what we were doing. And we made 2 records. We made 1 full-length record, and then we did a single. We did a 3-song cassette that was never touched digital. In fact, the Orange King. I just happened to find a copy right here, and
all right.
And then we did a blue vinyl, like a single 7-inch vinyl, and then then the band broke up, and Jeff and I are still friends. He's actually in town right now. He's from Austin, and he has a place on Vashon. We played out on Vashon Island last Friday. The band did, and he writes, and we get together and collaborate still, and it's fun. It's just one of those things where you look back, and I was joking with this guy. I told you I was talking to this guy yesterday, another one of the singer-songwriters from Seattle, and I said, I've been doing this since my first band was like 1987, but I've been making music really since 93. And we were joking, like, the only way to make it in this industry is to just outlast everyone. Because I'm 51. Danny, the guy I was talking to yesterday, he's 54. And we joked about, I'm like, yeah, I've been playing for 35 years, making mistakes the entire time, but learning from them. And now I feel like I'm just getting started. I feel like a kid when I do this, and the band I'm in, these guys are my band. They're all way younger than me. They're all really good. We get along awesome, and it's so fun. And that's, that's what life's about, man, of having fun, doing what you love. And so I feel super fortunate that I'm in the position that I'm in. The record's even the EP is getting awesome reviews. It's really difficult getting material out to people. I mean, I'm super appreciative of you to want to talk to me about it. It's super.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? And what's nice about it, and people appreciate this who watch, the different artists that I get to talk to. I would have never thought that this is the kind of background that I was going to be hearing from you. You sound so much. You sound more like your parents' generation would have done this. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but you have a mature sound about you. Maybe that's just part of the flavor of what you've been brought up on, coming out a little bit. But you just have a nice grown-up sound to you, and I like what I'm hearing. I really do.
One of the things my dad taught me, aside from being punctual.
That's a great thing. Yeah. Ian was right on time, which is not true of everybody that comes on my show. So I appreciate it.
If you're not 10 minutes early, you're late.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes.
He said, if you're going to do something, if you really like something and you're going to do it, be good at it. Give it the respect that it deserves, and you will get back from it tenfold what you put into it. And I think he's right. I love music. I love all kinds of music. And like I said, you got to have a sense of humor. You got to be able to make fun of yourself to a certain extent. I mean, look at Dave Grohl. God bless him. He's one of my favorite humans on the planet because he's so funny. He's got such a great sense of humor, and he makes great music.
Yeah. And then he's got that creative side. Look what he's doing with that Bee Gees type of thing that he's doing right now. Yeah. What they call the DGs, right?
Right, exactly. So, but you know, I've had 3 different vocal coaches, and the first 2, no thanks. But there was a guy, his name's Todd Herzog. I think he's in Arizona now, but he was in LA, and we met up, and he just got me, and I got him, and we worked really well together. And to this day, I still reach out to him on holidays, and I thank him because he taught me how to sing. And I do my vocal exercises every day. Singing is like running. And you're not going to go out and run a marathon or try to run an 800-meter sprint having been on the couch for 2 years. I mean, it's just not going to happen. Mm-hmm. So it's super important to like if you're a lead guitar player, you're going to practice, or you're not going to be good, you know? And I think, and then working with guys like Jesse, when you work with people that are so professional, when I did those 2 days in Ojai when we did the Results Not Typical record, I mean, I'm in a studio with Joey Waronker on drums, Dave Palmer on piano, or Aaron Embry. They were different days. Each day there was a different bass player. This guy named Jason Soda on guitar. I was a mice among men. I mean, I was like the by far so under-talented person in the room, and I had to rise up to their level, so I wasn't wasting their time. And when I came out of that session, I was 1,000 times better than when I went in. Great. And it's a because I have massive respect for them and what they've done. And of course, Jesse and you know, Jason Mariani, who was the engineer and mastering engineer who did the whole session. All these guys have such massive amounts of experience. And I have such respect for them that I made myself focus and come to that level. And then when I came out of it, I think I stayed at that level. And at the same time, it's like, try to keep it simple. When I sing, I try to just not be acrobatic about it. You know, I try to keep it simple, and melody is important to me. Lyrics are important to me. And I think and that's my lane. That's the lane that I'm in right now. I'm not Ed Vedder. I'm not Chris Cornell. I'm not going to be able to sing those rock things. Mm-hmm. My strength is more in that kind of James Taylor, you know, Jackson Browne lane, and I'm super comfortable there. I'll be able to do that until I die.
Well, if that's your spirit, don't deviate from it. That's what you should be doing, right?
I'm having an awful lot of fun doing this.
Great.
So and you know what? People seem to like it.
That's half of it. I mean, that's that part that people will pick up on, that you're having a great time with it, and then they can get into it with you. So they
sure were. And you know, when we play live, it's a lot different than the record. We kick it up a notch, and like we had the whole place dancing on Friday. It was craziness. So we read the room, and we try to make sure that we can keep people moving, or if they want to relax, we can chill down, play a waltz or something. But
yeah,
we definitely enjoy what we're doing.
Well, you know what, Ian, that your dad had great advice. That was sort of to a degree. That's what my dad gave me, the same type of advice. You know, if you're going to do it, go do it. Don't pussyfoot around and be wishy-washy about it. If you're going to do it, go do it. You know, get off the mark and start, you know, following your dream, to say, you know, he didn't put it like that, but that's the essence of what he was saying to me. But then there's also, hey, fine, he can give you that advice, but you got to want to take it and do something with it too. You know, you got to have that in your heart for real, you know, say, well, now he's called me on it, I got to go do it.
Well, and you got to believe in yourself.
True. Yeah.
Because I don't know, I've seen some guys in town here, and sometimes I wonder if they really believe in this before. You know, I'm never going to wow anyone with my guitar skills or my piano playing skills.
Yeah.
I've become a good singer, but I think my strength is as a songwriter. But also my strength is because running a business for 25 years is being able to manage a band. You have all these egos. You have to be able to manage that and make it work. Yeah. And so it's a culmination of a lot of different things. But again, you got to believe in yourself. You got to believe in all the guys that are around you. And you got to believe in what you're doing. And I think if you have that, then at least you're on the right start.
I agree. Yeah, that's great. Hey, I like that you picked up your guitar. This is a good cue for me to let's try to get in to do a song here. What do you think about it? We were talking about Hallelujah. You probably know that pretty well in your head.
Sure, I can do that.
Yeah.
So, I can tell you off the air what words I changed, but they're buried in somewhere. But this is so this is Hallelujah, and this was written on Christmas Eve in 2018. So it goes like this. Hallelujah, the sun is coming to brighten up my day. Hallelujah, the sun is coming to chase the night away. Hallelujah, the sun brings us closer together when we might go astray. Hallelujah, the sun is coming out today. Now, hallelujah, the rain's coming, wash my pain away. Hallelujah, the rain's coming, what more do I got to say? Hallelujah for friends and lovers, some are gone and some remain. Hallelujah, oh, the sun is coming out again. Then the sun comes up, the shadows get chased away. We get on with our lives, busy living another day. And then the sun goes down, so bring on those dreams. I don't care what anyone says, say hallelujah today. Hallelujah, the wind's blowing all my trouble away. But that wind won't be here forever, so the trouble will come again. And hallelujah for getting older and learning things that keep us sane. Hallelujah, well, the sun is coming out again. And the sun comes up, and the shadows get chased away. And we get on with our lives, busy living another day. And then the sun goes down, so bring on those dreams. I don't care what anyone says, say hallelujah today. Now hallelujah, the night's coming to put an end to the day. Lay my head down and close my eyes and fumble to pray. And give thanks to all those good things I had, all those things that I let slip away. I don't care what anyone says, say hallelujah today. I don't care what anyone says, say hallelujah today. I don't care what anyone says, say hallelujah.
Beautiful. There we go.
Thank you much.
Same old stupid joke I do. I'm sorry about that. Hey, let me put my hands together for that one. That was. And who needs a vocal coach? I mean, your voice sounds great. Why would you go through the trouble to have a coach for that?
Because it sounds like that because of my coach.
I'm just curious. That's a compliment somewhere in there. I just wanted to say that's great. what does the coach do for you? Help you, gain control of, stamina, anything like that? Because that's what I need is to have that strength in my voice again.
Well, it starts with anatomy and physiology of how the body works and how the muscles work. How after he explained to me how everything worked and how the whole body works when you're singing, it was very clear to me why Luciano Pavarotti could just crush anyone. It has to do with the amount of volume.
Yeah, so you didn't have to grow a big belly like I did.
No, he was like Luciano Pavarotti. He had a bigger cavity than anyone.
Yeah.
So, no, it's about breathing, and it's a lot of technique on moving up and down scales, so you could move in and out of falsetto without changing how you sound, and then also expanding your range. So I can go really low and I can go super high, but I tend to try to stay where it's comfortable.
Yeah, that wasn't a slap at Pavarotti, by the way, but it was just kind of like I always wondered how different body types, and they still Well, I always thought, you had to like lose that gap, but it's that cavity that you were referring to. Sometimes you got to have.
It has to do with the diaphragm as a muscle. Like when you breathe, it's involuntary.
Yeah.
You can teach yourself to keep the diaphragm open and still breathe, which makes the body cavity that much bigger. Then you could do that. Then it's a lot of stuff, but it's like jogging, exercising. You do it every single day. You get better at it. I've actually taught a couple people that have really wanted to learn how to sing. And like this one guy in particular here in town, and what a difference it made. And he tells me all the time, man, people come up to me all the time and they're like, what did you do? Your voice sounds so much better. And I'm like, see, it's like jogging. It's like someone's coming up and saying, man, you're so much faster now. It's like, well, because I've been running. It's the exact same thing. It's just muscles. So
yeah. Exactly. So you were telling me something. We talked about this earlier, but tell me a little bit about what you do. I want to say on the side, but this is what you've done for like 30 years. You fix homes, and this is what's kept you sane, kept you productive in mind and body, right?
Well, it definitely has kept me gainfully employed.
That's a plus.
When I here, hang on a sec.
Yeah. Well, you got to pay the bills, right? That's
when I came back, and after my dad got sick, I was in a band for a little bit, and it wasn't it was like I was kind of doing it to keep my chops up. As like I hate to say that this way. I don't want to come across the wrong way, but it was kind of like, well, I'll just do it as a hobby. And I was miserable. Because I wasn't doing it. Like my dad said, if you're going to do something, do it. I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it. Well, the whole industry had changed. Back in the early 90s, there was no Spotify. There was no Facebook. There was no YouTube. There was no MySpace. There was none of that, right? It was radio and MTV, of course. And when everything happened and I went to go back into it, everything had changed. Not only with the introduction of all the social media stuff and streaming, but the music industry changed. I mean, labels were gone. I mean, everything was totally backwards from what it was when the last time I was in it. So my sister is in radio. She has a station down in Marin. And she said, you should come to Nashville with me and come to the AMAs. She said, don't try to push your music. Don't just come and learn. So I went, and I had the time of my life. And again, I didn't tell anyone that I was a singer-songwriter. I just went to observe and learn.
Right.
And then I went back the next year. And then I went back the next year. And what I was doing is taking these seminars and these classes, and I was putting together a game plan. And after about the third year, I was sitting with my sister and some other people, and Roseanne Cash and her husband. And I was a third wheel. I mean, I was there because of my sister, and I was just listening. And at one point, one of them said, if you were able to be convincing, but then you would have already made your money, then you'd be good. Because nobody knows what's going on. no one knows what the plan is or what your plan should be. But Roseanne Cash and her husband said, what you need to do is make a plan for you. You make your own plan that you think is going to be best for you, and then stick to it. Don't let anyone tell you that your plan is wrong or that it's not going to work, because what the hell do they know? And then somewhere along the lines, it came up that, but if you're going to do it, you have to have a revenue stream, because it's not cheap to do. So I went back home and I made a 5-year plan. And part of that 5-year plan was I need to take my construction business and grow it so I can have a revenue stream. And so I hired a woman who had been in the industry for 50 years, and she taught me everything about the construction industry. And one of the things that we did is the same thing. It kind of goes back to what my dad said: if you're going to do something, do it right. I have a lot of respect for the construction trade. And if I'm going to go in and work on someone's house, I damn well better do a good job. And so that I don't get callbacks.
Yeah.
So that was what our business model was. We're going to go in, we're going to have integrity. We're going to do a really good job, fair priced, and build our business. Well, that happened. And so then by the time it got to where the Results Not Typical record was being made, I was doing better than I'd ever done. And I was able to do that and build everything up and pay for and maintain my mortgage and feed my kids.
Yeah.
and live a decent, comfortable lifestyle. It's extraordinarily hard work. So then the gal that I hired, she retired. And so then it's just me. It's just me and my company. And I work on 100-year-old houses, and I fix the problems that has all the bad remodels over the last 50, 60 years. I try to do small jobs. I do remodel kitchens. I remodel bathrooms. And then I also do basement build outs, because in Seattle, it's tough to make a lateral move because housing and the market is insane. So there's a lot of unfinished basements. So we go in and we finish them. We add a bathroom, we put egress windows in, we build living space. And if you have a 1-story, 1,000-square-foot house, all of a sudden you have a 2,000-square-foot house with an extra bathroom and an extra bedroom and a sitting room. And the value people get is way more than what they pay me. And so I'm able to help people. I make a lot of friends. I end up being friends with most of my clients.
Oh, nice.
And it also allows me to pay for this crazy, I say my construction business pays for my bad music habit. But in a way, it's a joke, but in a way it's true. And so, and now I'm at a point where, believe it or not, the music doesn't completely pay for itself, but it almost does. And it won't take much for it to pay for itself, because I own everything and I've built it over the last 30 years. So it's one of those things where it doesn't take a lot. It's expensive making good records. And that's
for sure. Yeah. I don't know how people do it, but you got to really believe that this is a worthwhile project, right?
Well, and Jim Messina told me something, and this is the best advice I ever got. He said, don't stop what you're doing because you're good at what you do. He said, but let me give you a bit of advice. He said, if you're going to do this, and this is kind of what my dad said, he goes, if you're going to do this, it's about being in the right place at the right time. And which is true. Ultimately, you never know where you're going to be playing, where that one person in the audience could change your life. So it's about being in the right place at the right time, but you got to be ready to be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
So it means stay practiced, don't go on stage drunk, respect what you're doing and be ready. He goes, but more importantly, you got to always be ready to never be in the right place at the right time. And it took me a while to figure out what he meant. And it's like, if you're doing this to get famous or get rich, well, you're probably going to be gravely disappointed. And at some point in time, you're going to become bitter and jaded. But if you do it because you love it, then all bets are off, man. I mean, I love writing songs. I come out here and I'll play just to myself because I love it so much. I love performing for people. I love playing with my band. And I love making records because especially with someone like Jesse, because now I can actually listen to my record and enjoy it, which is I've never been able to do before.
Oh, beautiful.
So if you would have told me 15 years ago that I would have said that, I would have said, no, no way. But no, I feel like I'm really lucky. I'm blessed to be able to do what I do. And again, I go to work and it's hard work every single day. I mean, I wake up at 5:30 in the morning and I go to work and I bust my butt, and then I come home and sometimes I'm up till 11:30, 12 at night playing music, and then I do the whole thing over again. So it's a lot of work, but it's rewarding.
Well, maybe for 2 seconds, if you can indulge me, brag on the young girl who's the light of your life that helps you through all this, I'm sure, right? Who's behind you, cheering you on or fighting with you about it or whatever she does.
Her name's Pauline, and we met in 1993, and which is funny because that's over half my life ago, and that's wow. That's pretty intense. She's beautiful. She's super smart. She's the greatest mom in the world to my kids. I'm super lucky. My kids are super smart and bright and happy and fun. We get along great. As much as we're best friends, but we're also great. I think we're great parents. We're great roommates, which I think is super important when you're married to someone. That's a big.
I am totally in your corner with that. Yeah.
You got to be a good roommate. We allow each other as much leeway and space as we need. I mean, it sounds weird to say she lets me do my music stuff, but it's tough because there's a lot of times I have to leave. And I know guys that are brilliant musicians that gave up touring. Some of the guys that live in LA, they just do session stuff because they don't want to be away from their family.
Yeah.
It's tough. And I have friends in Nashville that go on the road and, they miss their kids. They miss their family. And I get it. And I want to go on the road and I want to play, but I look at it now and I'm like, man, it's going to suck. It's, luckily there's Zoom calls and luckily there's FaceTime because I'm going to want to talk to my kids every single day.
Yeah.
And again, so she lets me do my thing and I let her do her thing. And we have sort of like a mutual agreement where we like just kind of try to stay out of each other's way. And it's worked for 28 and a half years. So,
yeah. So that's when you got married. In 1993, you got married, you said?
No, we met.
You met in 93. Yeah. Okay.
So we've been married, man, September 20th, which is coming right up. It will be 18 years, I think, married.
Oh, okay. But you've known each other for all that time, so that's what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So we met and started. It wasn't like we were just friends, but we met and started dating.
Oh, no, this is great. I didn't mean to throw a stick in the spokes of your story there for a second. I thought I misunderstood, thinking that you married her way back when, but it's only been this long. So it's pretty much the same thing. I always tell my wife and I celebrate October 15th, 1982. That was our first date. We still celebrate that. And then we got married in 86. So we have 2 anniversaries that we celebrate. You know what I'm saying? Oh, good. You're back. I'm sorry about that. You froze on there. It must have been something.
Yeah, you froze. You were telling me about your wife, and then it just went blank.
Oh, so the same thing happened to you on your end. Then all I got was a frozen picture. So I don't know what's going on.
Up and it said my internet connection is unstable, but I pay for the highest.
Yeah, you know what? I did the same thing. I went to the trouble to upgrade, and I changed companies just so I could have a cable connection because I was getting this all the time. All my interviews were getting ruined because of my unstable internet connection, right. And this is supposed to help it, but I'm sorry. See, this is what happens. See, I go and talk about myself, and that's what ruins the whole thing. So I was just trying to relate to you on some level that, I love a good love story and that it's still going because that's my situation as well. So,
well, and on top of that, she is the muse of a lot of songs. And it's kind of buried. I mean, I don't sing directly her name or anything, but there are some times where there'll be a song and there'll be a line in the song that's directly directed at her. And no one will get it, but I know it.
Yes.
And she knows. So it's stuff like that, So
Well,
there's a song, the last song on the Results Not Typical record. It's called "Goodbyes Are the Hardest Words." Just a quick story. We were just getting ready to move to California, and I was going to move to Santa Barbara, and she was going to move to LA because she had a job there, and we were going to kind of long distance date for a little while as I pursued my music career, which looking back is hilarious. The decision at the time. However, so we were living in this house in Seattle, and she had to go because she was going to start her job. And so I had my van loaded up with all her stuff and the bed on top, and she had her car. She had a Honda. So she gets in her car, and I'm like, all right. So I went out and I get in my van, and my van wouldn't start. And the house is completely empty, like cleaned, everything, totally vacant. And my van wouldn't start. And she said, I got to go. I've got to be at work in like 2 days. I've got to drive. I got to go. And I'm like, I will try to get my van started, and I will just come behind you.
Yeah. And
as I watched her pull away, I was standing in the window, and I just had this overwhelming feel of like dread. Like, am I ever going to see her again? And I went downstairs and I wrote "Goodbyes Are the Hardest Words" in like 15 minutes. And never really played it for anyone. And then one day there was an open mic in Santa Barbara, and I decided, and everyone was playing these new songs. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'll play this new song. And I played "Goodbyes Are the Hardest Words." And this guy came up to me afterwards, and we're dear friends to this day. And he said, "Who are you, and what the hell song was that?" And I said, "My name's Ian. I just moved down here from Seattle, and that was a song that I just wrote." And he goes, "Dude, you had me weeping."
Oh.
And then we became friends. And this is funny because 10 years prior, he had said, "You got to have my friend Jesse record that song." Cool. And when the whole thing, after my piano record, I had started making another record, and it totally fell apart. I got burned for a lot of money. And I remember calling John up, and I said, "Man, I don't know what I'm going to do. This, that, or the other thing." And he said, "Call Jesse. He just had a kid. He's got nothing but time. He loves your stuff." And then he said, "But if you make a record with Jesse, you have to record Goodbyes Are the Hardest Words." So we ended up doing it. And I honestly thought, because it's a love song, and I honestly thought it was going to be a string quartet maybe. And instead, again, in Jesse being the producer and doing his own thing, he did like this David Gilmour Echoplex slide solo.
Oh, no.
Which, if you listen to it, turn it up really loud, because when the solo comes in, you'll just be like, oh, yes. It makes, the song is very powerful, but the slide solo in that song takes it to another level.
Oh, I can attest.
Yeah, it's pedal steel is one of my favorite instruments in the entire world.
Is it? Yeah. Can you play that?
Oh, no. I dabbled for a second, and then someone was like, "Yeah, son, you don't want to." It's
tough.
That's a lifelong journey.
Oh, I know a couple people that can do that. I'm like those things you see on the internet where the kids can't figure out how to use the rotary phone, and they're going like, how does this work? What are you supposed to do? Do you hang it up and then that kind of thing? I look at the pedal steel and go like, I don't know where to put my hands and
there's levers and foot pedals, and I'm like, no thanks.
Yeah. Kind of like a zither. It's nice. It's nice that people know how to use these instruments and put out the greatest sounds you ever heard.
I'm over here looking at my Telecaster that has 2 knobs and a switch, and I'm like, that's almost too much for me.
Simplicity invented back then. Yeah. Thanks for, before the internet drops out, I should thank you for coming on, and we talked for a long time here. So it was, but it was worth learning about all this stuff. And all this time, there's only 6 songs on your EP, and we only talked about a couple of them. So like, one of the things is, the single that you're going to put forth is Evergreens, right? And we didn't even, what's the story about that? Because we never got the chance to talk about that. Maybe I can lead out with that when the show's on.
Evergreen, I was living in Santa Barbara. And before I left, and this is before I had kids, when I left Washington the first time, leading up to that departure, my best friend and I we hunt together and we fish together. And one of my favorite things to do was just sit in a fishing boat with him, and we'd fish for salmon in the Puget Sound. And I didn't realize when I left how much I was going to miss that. And I guess you take a lot for granted when you live in a place, up here in Washington, we've got Mount Rainier, we've got the Puget Sound, we've got the Olympic Mountains out to the west, we've got the Cascade Mountains out to the east. Half the year they're covered in snow, and they're just wonderful. They're beautiful.
It's gorgeous, right?
And and when it's clear, which everyone thinks it rains up here all the time. It's not true. It really is a beautiful place. It's very green, and the forests where we spend a lot of time hunting and fishing. So I go down to California, and of course he's calling me up saying, "Oh, I got another 25-pounder." Like there was like a week leading up to it where he was calling me once or twice a day. Caught another 30-pounder, caught another 27-pounder. And it was killing me, right? So I'm sitting at lunch. I'll never forget, I was at Red Robin in Santa Barbara on my lunch break. And I'm eating and I'm watching TV. And on TV at the bar in Red Robin, I'm watching these guys catch salmon in Alaska, these big 50-pounders, right?
Really?
So, and I'm just shaking my head like, man, I missed that. When my phone rings and it's my buddy Dave again, who's like, caught another 25-pounder. And I'm like, hey, let me call you right back. So I hang up. I call my boss and I'm like, hey, I'm going to need a few days off. And then I call the airline. I didn't even call Pauline. I just called the airline next, booked the next flight out the next morning. Went home and I was like, hey, I'm going to be gone for a couple of days. I'm going to go up and go fishing with Dave. She's like, well, whatever, fine. So I get to the airport. He picks me up at the airport. I had my bag and my pole, and he had his boat moored in the marina. We drove from the airport straight to the marina, went out in the boat, fished that night, came back in. Next morning, fished, came back, took a nap, fished. We basically fished every waking hour for 4 days. Didn't catch a damn thing.
That's a lot of not fishing, isn't it?
And one of the mornings, we were sitting out in the boat. And when you fish, you don't talk a lot. Right, you're just sitting there doing your thing. Every once in a while, you hear a beer open, and we're sitting there, and he goes, "No, I think I said." I looked at my watch. I said, "It's 9 a.m." And then, a minute goes by, and he goes, "Sure don't feel like August." And then another minute goes by, and he looks at me. He goes, "If that's not the first line of a song, I've never heard it." And I was like, "It's 9 a.m. Sure don't feel like August." And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good. So I went home to Santa Barbara, and I was sitting in my studio, and I'd been playing with this guy named Pat Milliken, who was a brilliant guitar player. He's no longer with us, and he played a lot in the Dadgad tuning, which is
okay, like the open tuning stuff, open chord stuff.
Dadgad, you got to write a song in Dadgad. So one day I was sitting there and I had this little lick, and then I was like, 9 a.m. Sure don't feel like August. And the rest of the song completely wrote itself. And I was sitting in this garage, let's be honest.
Sure.
And I realized that even though I was in paradise, Santa Barbara, don't get me wrong, if I had the money, the first thing I'd do is buy a house in Santa Barbara because it's just awesome. It's the most awesome place I've ever been. But I missed my friends. I had friends in Santa Barbara, but they weren't the friends that like you've had your whole life, that you could tell anything to. I missed the trees, I missed the ocean, the water, I missed the mountains, and I just missed being home. There's a certain familiarity with being in a place that you're that comfortable in. And there's also something great about leaving that comfort zone and trying new things, because that's what life's all about. And I knew that I was doing that, but at the same time, I had this weird sense of loneliness, even though I was surrounded by a lot of people. And that's where the song comes. It's for people that have taken that chance and gone out on a limb and gone and done something. And it's okay to miss your home. It's okay to miss your friends. It's all right. I mean, everyone thinks that you got to be such a tough guy all the time. That's not the case. It's all right to be a softie every once in a while. And that's kind of what that song's about. You know, it's about not being sure. And then you let your guard down a little bit and you get burned, you know, and now you're in this place that you thought was so great and you just got burned and you realize it's not so great. And it makes you miss your home and your friends even more. So that's kind of what that song's about. And we did the video for it, which just debuted when the single came out. And we were trying to think of the most lonely thing that you could represent on film. And the first thing we thought was, you know, if you could get to Times Square with 1 million people around and have someone videotaping you as if you didn't know anyone, even though there's 1 million people around and you're all alone.
Yeah.
We're like, well, we're in the middle of a pandemic. So that idea's out, you know? And then I thought, what about an empty warehouse? And then we're like, where are we going to find an empty warehouse? And then one dear friend of mine said, I just happened to work for a property management company. We have a 60,000 square foot vacant warehouse. So we went and we shot at night. We set up 2 lights and I sat in the middle of this completely empty warehouse. And I played along and I recorded the song. And then we just filled the rest of the video in with images of me up at the lake where I fish and walking through the woods and just up in the Northwest. And for a bunch of rookies who had no right to be making a video because we didn't know what the hell we were doing, it turned out pretty good. And you know, and the song's good. It's a really strong song. So I think even if the video would have sucked, it would have been okay because the song is good. But I thought it worked out pretty well.
No, that's great. Thank you for telling that story. That gives it a little more depth than what I was thinking it was. It's very, very poignant, very introspective. Sound like you were longing for that time again, I guess, or that moment, like you were saying. It was pretty cool.
It's 9 a.m. It sure don't feel like August. The cold wind's blowing from the east. I miss my friends. It seems forever since I left my home in the Evergreens. The day I left, well, my past so sure it said itself. But now I'm not sure what it means. But still each day I rise, hope to start another day, one step closer to my dreams. And should the road I ride lead me to the promised land, and should I end up far from where I want to be, I only hope that when my time comes on Judgment Day, that judge goes easy on me. Ain't it nice? Another day down here in paradise. But is this where I want to be? I take a good look around and notice that my guard's gone down. The price of happiness ain't free. And should the road I ride lead me to the promised land, and should I end up far from where I want to be, I only hope that when my time comes on Judgment Day, that judge goes easy on me. Now it's nearly midnight. It's early mid-September. The red wine has got the best of me. And here I sit again, and I still miss my friends up there in the evergreens.
The end of the chorus, you know, and when my time comes on Judgment Day, I hope that goes easy on me. And that's really, I think that's all we all can hope for. You know, whether, doesn't matter what you believe, you know, when our time comes, you know, I think that there's something greater than us, you know, and I just hope that they, you know, I used to joke and say, you know, whether it's St. Peter at the pearly gates or whatever, I would love for them to say, oh, you were a musician. Oh, hey, you broke even. Good for you. You can come, you know, whatever it is. I just hope that whatever it is, that judge goes easy, you know? So
that's better than that. Thank you. Wow. Glad I got that in. Cause I just realized, you know, that was like your, that's going to be your signature song right at the moment. You know, you put that out first, right? Everybody's got to see that video now. So.
Yeah, and you know, and that's great because when the band plays that song, we always get responses from people, and we play it different than it is on the record because we don't have Jesse. Dylan plays lap steel on it, and we try to recreate as much as we can, but it's a different feel because it's different people. But it's definitely a crowd favorite. People really like that song. So
this is a side note because you were saying that you know, for crowds. Looks like you created a good one. Last Call sounded like a really cool closer for your thing. Whether or not it's going to really be that, but it's is there a hidden meaning behind that? Like, are you actually talking to the crowd, or is this meaning that you're talking to someone else?
Last Call is there's a funny story behind that. Being a touring musician at the level that I am at is a lot of driving and a lot of sitting around and waiting to play 45 minutes so you can go back and drive. You know, it's like you don't get paid much at all. Hopefully you sell some merch. And we do it because we love it. And most of the people that are at the level, and of course, when I say that, I mean, there is a level where there's tour buses and chartered planes where it's probably completely different. And I've never been at that.
Yeah, that's way above expert, right? That's something else. Yeah.
I don't know that world.
Yeah.
But the world where I'm in, it's like, and people come back and they go, oh man, you were on tour. And the people that aren't musicians, I think they think that it's some sort of glorious, glamorous lifestyle. Like, oh, you're on tour and there's chicks and you probably get killer food and it's all this stuff. It's like, no, you're in a van with sticky guys. You're lucky if someone's not eating chili cheese fries in the van, you know, which can turn into a really bad situation a couple hours later. You're lucky if you get showers consistently. You're not, you know, people are at each other's throats. It's, again, a lot of driving and playing pool when you don't want it. I mean, it's not glamorous at all. So Last Call is a parody of what I think a lot of people think being a touring musician is all about. So it's a total parody. So,
yeah.
You know, like, oh, I got to go back and get in my bus. And honey, it's been great to see you. Thanks for, you know, giving us a good time. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's like, it's totally hilarious because half the time, if you're in a touring band, you don't even want to talk to girls because you've just got off stage. You're soaking wet with sweat. You probably haven't showered in 2 days. It's like the last thing you want to do is get physically close to anyone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, so the chicks and the clinking of the glasses and the great accommodations and the travel, that's all what they put in the brochure of Rockstar. But they, you know, they don't. I think we all know that there's you know, there's the work side of it that you got to maintain, but it's still a labor of love what you do, correct? Yeah.
Believe it or not, so there is actually a song that we close every show with, and it's called Good Night. which is why we close with it.
Uh-huh.
And it's very much along the lines of something that would have been off of like, it sounds like something that could have been on Sticky Fingers, like mid-70s Rolling Stones.
Yeah? I'll have to check that out.
Being very bluesy. The joke is we're never going to record it unless there's a footage of someone gets it on footage, like and puts it on a video, or we do a live thing, because and the whole thing is that people are already starting to sing along with it at the end, and like it's a very cool song. So maybe
I can't check it out because I'd have to go to one of your shows and check it out. Then
you do, yeah. And hopefully we'll be down there. Hopefully we'll get down there and play as soon as it's safe to do so.
The sun's coming up, and I'm laying you down. It's just one more thing I remember about this town. But I'm out of time, and we've had our fun. Thanks for taking me in, I wanna do it again, but I gotta move on. I've got one more hour to kill before I hit that road again. You know the devil's got time, and if you don't mind, for one more round of sin, but it's getting late. Tonight's been great. Thanks for taking me in, making me grin, but I gotta move on. Thanks for taking me in, the road's calling again, so I gotta move on. Thanks for taking me in, I'd love to do it again, but I gotta move on.
Just for the, because I do have a weird a vision problem, but did you change guitars in the middle of our conversation there?
I did. So I figured you would ask about, the first one I played was in standard tuning, and then I figured you might ask about evergreens, so I switched to this one, which is in Dadgad.
And it happened to work out because I asked you about evergreens, so good job. You took the words out of my mouth about all those influences we were talking about, Roger McGuinn, the Byrds, and Dylan, and Tom Petty. I swear to you, hands to the sky, this is exactly what I was going to ask you about, because I heard all those influences in there. Even if it wasn't what you intended, that's what I was hearing, and I thought that this is you could do a lot worse than those type of things. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, if you want to do the legwork, listen to Hallelujah, and then go back and listen to Shooting Star by Dylan.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. It's very similar but different. I mean, it's GCD, but it's the way it's done is it's definitely a nod to Dylan on that song.
Awesome. Well, I'll tell you what. Thank you. We could have talked a lot longer, but this is kind of how the show goes. We just get to talking, and people like that about that. The only problem is then I go, did I talk enough about your record? I think I did, but
I encourage people to check it out. I mean, again, we talked a little bit about the Spotify stuff. If you listen to it, if you like it, add it to a playlist. That's what I ask, because it really does make a difference.
Okay.
The metrics the algorithms that run those sites do pick up on stuff like that. And I have been, as of late, starting to get added to a lot more playlists. And then the other thing I would ask people is, and not just with me, but if you hear a song that you like on Spotify, go buy that record. Go to iTunes or go to CD Baby or go to wherever, Amazon, and buy the record. Because that $9 makes a massive difference to the artists. Because we're not making any money. And so like all those artists I was telling you about, when I would hear a song, when I heard a Jason Isbell song, I bought a record. And as soon as I listened to that record, I went and I bought every single record he'd ever put out.
Nice.
Same thing with Sturgill Simpson. I heard one Sturgill Simpson song. I didn't even have to hear the record. I went and bought everything he had put out. And I'm damn glad that I did, because. So
you're saying that my measly contribution, that $9 I invest in some music into my collection, that actually makes a difference.
It makes a huge difference, because think about it. Like for me, I own all my stuff. So you buy one of my records, it's $9. That's, rounded up to 10 for easy math.
Mm-hmm.
If 100 people do that, and the amount of people that are listening, everyone listens to music. So if you like something, hey, $10, that's a bottle of wine. That's two lattes. That's not very much. You'll spend $10 and not even know it. So spend the $10. I read a Brad Paisley, I loved reading biographies, right? So I read this Brad Paisley biography, and in the book, and I've done this many times where I'll be reading a book and someone will say, oh, and I listened to this artist, and I'll just go buy that artist's record. Because I'm like, hey, if it influenced this guy. And in the Brad Paisley book, there's a band he mentions that he was a huge influence on him. And I'm like, man, okay. So I went and I bought 2 records of this band. I'm not going to say the band's name. And I listened to both of them. And I probably will never listen to them again. But I listened to them beginning to end.
Yeah.
Bought and they got the money. Hey, it's not my cup of tea, but I never would have known had I not done it. And that supports them. And so spend the $7 to $9, $10 for the record. If you don't like it, how many times have you bought a 6-pack of beer and tasted it and been like, gross, and given it to your buddy, or bought a bottle of wine and been like, yeah, that's turned, and so you dump it out, or left half the plate of food on the food plate because you didn't like how it tasted. It's
no, absolutely. Yeah. No, you don't have to convince me. That's for sure. Because I
just wish more people would try to tell the general public, hey, Spotify is a great thing for learning about other artists. But if you hear something that you really like, go buy the record.
Yeah, Spotify doesn't have a store for you to go get it. You go find it somewhere else. But that's what we were talking about earlier on in the show, is that Spotify is a good vehicle to get you to learn about new things. And like that algorithm, it'll point you to some things that you also would like, by that same artist or artists that sound like you, and the typical thing.
Go look up the artist when you're going to buy the record. Look up there, see if they have a YouTube channel. Watch some live videos of them. You might like them. You might hate them.
And the $9, if that's a real figure. I remember 40 years ago, what was it? No, 1980. I was 16 years old. I bought the latest at the time Steely Dan album. It was called Gaucho, 1980. And that thing was with tax. When I went to the record store, it was like 10, it was outrageous. I paid over $10 for that record, and it was only 7 songs on the record. It wasn't like a double album or anything. And I said, this is incredible. Is this the future of music? It's going to be crazy. I won't be able to afford all these new albums anymore because this is the inflation getting the best of us. But it turned out it wasn't like that. The medium changed. You got CDs and all that stuff. So
how many times did you play Gaucho?
Few times. You wear it out like all my other albums. You have your favorites you go back to. But I have a lot of these albums. I'll go back on. Sorry if this is the wrong thing to do, but I'll go find them on YouTube because I don't want to drag the thing out and put it on the turntable. I'll go listen to it on my phone and play it in the car,
If you bought it already, for me, it's like if someone buys my record, I don't care where they listen to it.
Yeah.
I have, for the results not typical, I have vinyl, and it comes, it's a beautiful gatefold. The album cover, the artwork is amazing. Well, it comes with a digital download code. So you can buy the vinyl and then you can download it on your phone and listen to MP3s if you want. I don't care.
Yeah, I put mine on. I put your songs on an iPod Shuffle, and I just stuck it in the car radio and listened to it that way, and it was great. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So that wasn't meant to be like a promo for you. I'm just telling you what I did. It's a lot of fun.
I think it's a listenable record. So,
Yeah. Truth be told, I want people to, listen to your music. That's what you want. But at the end of the day, I just like this almost 2-hour conversation we had here. This is at least you're not in another time zone where it's not time for you to go to bed.
Well, this also beats. I told the guy whose house I'm working on. I said, hey, today I'm going to take off early. I got a Zoom interview. He goes, will you be coming back? I'm like, I don't know how long it's going to be, honestly. But in this way beats swinging a hammer.
Well, we're back. We just had a little private conversation, and you didn't get to hear it, so because I didn't want you to. So anyway, and it wasn't anything dirty. It's just, hey, it's private stuff. What do you want? I'm making friends here with Ian, so it's I'm really appreciative of you sharing from your soul, because I think maybe you've caught on. This is not a songwriting instruction show. This is not a music show per se. It's more of, hey, what's in here and how it comes out in your songs. And I really like learning about the man, and Pauline and the kids are a big part of what you are. And, whether they come out in your music or not, this is who you are. And this is what people love to see when we talk. So I couldn't ask for anything better from you. So thank you, Ian. I appreciate that.
I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk, and it's been awesome talking to you. And
thank you.
Hey, man, I'll put out another record. We'll do it again.
Sounds great. Sounds like you had one in the works already. So, right, with the living room city all stars, whatever you said.
Living room all stars.
Living room all stars. Yes, yeah. I can't. I'm an old man. I can't figure out this stuff anymore.
That's okay. Our hard drives are both full.
No, but it's been wonderful. Let's see. Let me officially read off this little thing here. It says Ian Jones' new 6-song EP, Evergreens, set for release on October 22nd of 2021. Do the honors. How do people find you on the internet? Google you, or you have a website? Is it Ian Jones Music? I think it is something like that.
Yeah,
What's the best way to do it then?
I'm terrible at self-promotion. So the website is ianjonesmusic.com, and I would say all of the social media sites, Spotify, YouTube, Twitter, everything is Ian Jones Seattle.
Oh, okay. So you made it easy. Yeah, so Ian Jones, Seattle. That's great. Ian Jones. It's easy for you to remember because, as I told you before, it sounds like a cool name, and you didn't make it up. Your parents did. So that's wonderful. So it was really a pleasure to talk to you, Ian, and I want to thank you so much again for being on the show. And my hat's off to you. You have some great music, and you have a great story, and thank you for sharing it all with us. I appreciate the live performance, and this is going to be hopefully not the last time we talk.
Well, Dean, I'll come down and play in person for you sometime.
Okay, sounds good. I'll open the door for you, and you can come on over.
All right.
Thanks again, Ian. Ian Jones, everybody. Take care of yourself, and we'll be in touch, okay?
Here, have a good one.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.